Hello, music makers of the world. My name is Harry Rabin, aka Fortune. I'm a 16-year-old producer and sound engineer, and a couple days ago I dropped a new track, a remix of Diamonds by Rihanna, and I got a lot of homies asking me to do a breakdown of the track and some mixing techniques that I use for it and stuff. So let's get started on that right away. We're just going to go track for track through the entire project. So let's get at it. So the first track is right here, this piano no HPF. That's no high pass filter. Basically, I get really lazy with automations, so rather than have one piano track where it's just automated high pass filter on off or whatever, I just do two separate tracks. Like, it's no big deal. I use Addictive Keys, which is like a really lightweight piano plugin. Yeah, so the first one with no high pass filter sounds like this, kind of bassy. And then this one that plays during the drop to allow the kind of sub bass to take over is this right here. It actually it says high pass filter. I've actually put a band pass filter on it. It cuts off some of the high end too to allow the synth and the vocals to take over, which is another issue that I had. ARP is here. ARP is just a massive preset. It's just super simple square wave pluck. It's no big deal. It's just with some compression on it to make it pop a little bit more. The lead, this is where things get crazy. This is kind of this was a lead that I made for an older project that I reused for this, and it's just in massive. I'm not going to show the patch. I don't like showing patches in my videos. Anyway, so what I've done here was, because I wanted the synth to hit hard and I wanted it to have a lot of power, I did a very custom stereo image, no plugins or anything. I did this as is, 3 tracks, so you can't have a MIDI group in Ableton, only an audio group. So I have my 3 MIDI tracks here, each running the same exact instance of massive, and then just the main one, well, the left one that's pan 40 left buses the MIDI over, not the audio to the right and the center. Left and right, aside from panning on the mixer, are the same. The center one is 3 decibels lower in volume and has a low cut at 100 hertz, just to allow the side stereo image to take over more. And that sounds like this. And there's a very quiet delay that just it adds something to the song. Like it sounds kind of weird without it. Yeah, and then they all group together through to their audio group, which has EQing, compression, a sidechain compression. Basically, I made my own beast out of this because of this EQing right here, where I really pushed this high shelf. I made it really hard for the vocals to get through during the second half of the drop. So to make up for that, I sidechained it to the vocals, so whenever the vocals cut through, this kind of gets pushed down a little bit. What else we got? Then delay, and then reverb. This is just a really, really ultra simple reverb with a little bit of like a band pass going on in the middle, kind of there. Just kind of helps to get rid of some of the really, really bright reflections that can kind of clog up the spectrum. Then we have our bass, and this is what really makes that saw hit, because the saw on its own is not that hard hitting. So especially when you're listening on systems that have an independent subwoofer, or at least a bass speaker. So that's just the synth on its own. That's just the saw on its own, and then here's the bass. And when you bring them together, you can hear that it kind of hits a little harder. Hold on, I have single solo on. There we go. Okay, so. You can hear it, it kind of shakes a little bit harder. It's not a good word for that. Then we come to the drums. The drums are, in terms of programming, are ridiculously simple. So what we've got here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So what we've got are just 4 kicks to every measure. So it's just... And I made sure the sub really pops through on these kicks. What did I do that made these 2 kicks different? I actually am not sure. I think it was... Oh, yeah. So there's 2 kicks going on in the song. They're exactly the same. One's compressed, one isn't. That's the only difference. I don't know why I did that. I do a lot of things that aren't necessarily by the book when I'm mixing, but it sounds good and it makes it work. So... And then the second kick, uncompressed, is here. And then we've got a rim shot and a snare. And then these 2 right here, rim 2 and snare 2, identical. If I'm not mistaken, slightly different volumes, not like separate, louder or quieter. And the reverb is a little bit wetter on these. Yeah, and then not much changes, except there's a third one where they are way louder, which plays right here to make the really loud snare hit right before the drop comes. So it's like this. You can hear the subsequent ones during the drop are quieter. Then we come to vocals. I got these stems off of, I don't know, one of the, like, the free or, like, very low pay, not stems, acapella, off of one of the free or very low pay acapella sites. This was the best I could find. It says that it's 320 kilobits per second, but, you know, bitrate isn't everything. There's other things wrong with this. There's artifacts. It was clearly like overcompressed at one point, and it's not a line level signal. There is reverb and delay on it still, and I'm not happy about that. But it works, but I would have preferred my own, because you can see these tails kind of have this weird glistening effect on their own. So alive. Yeah, it's not fantastic. And then there's a little chop of the syllable, well, not syllable, the sound kai and sky, that just plays every beat during the drop, just like this. And I have the main vocals. These are vocoded to the piano just a little bit. I have these vocoding through the piano. And then this kai chop, I have it vocoding a little bit more through the lead synth. It just made it somehow pop a little bit more. But yeah, you can hear the lead synth coming through when I just play this. Yeah, it just made things kind of pop. This compression bus and clean bus was a thing I was originally trying to do, and it just wound up making the master really noisy. And I don't like using group effects generally, unless it's, you know, something like this where it really is like all the same, because it's, you know, the literal same massive patch coming through 3 times for a stereo image. Otherwise, I don't really like using group effects. Vocals, other exception. Compression, like for this chop, like, yeah, it ends there. This is not actually my final. I have a mix project for this somewhere that I exported the stems, and I put them in another Ableton project. I don't know what I did with that project. Whatever you hear on SoundCloud of this is what came out of that project. This is before that. So this is not completely final. This master chain is ultra simple. I normally use everything FabFilter, except when I was kind of putting my finishing touches on this, all my FabFilter stuff like stopped working. Like the plugins would just crash Ableton for some reason. I reinstalled everything and it worked fine after that, but it never like occurred to me, and I was in the middle of another big project, so I couldn't bear to like lose those or lose Ableton or whatever. So I scrapped that for a while, but I wanted to get this out as soon as possible, so I just finished it all using Ableton plugins for this, at least for this demo. For the mix project, I had FabFilter. Yeah, that just about covers everything. Yeah, mastering, just limiter and EQ. I got this trick from deadmau5, which is to kind of low cut everything below a certain point. It was like one of the first really, really valuable pieces of mixing advice I ever received. It's as soon as you hear your songs or anything that you've mixed played over a good PA system, like I've heard my mixes over like JBL, like Vertex systems, like K2V or KV2, I never remember, like loud QSE DJ systems, like DJ PAs, and as soon as you hear it on those things, you can understand what all those like sub bass harmonics, like how they kind of can destroy the rest of the track if you're not careful about them. And I don't like this Ableton EQ for the reason that it's at most 48 decibels an octave cut. There's no good thing like Engineer filter for Mac, but FabFilter Pro Q comes pretty close. You can do up to 96 decibels an octave low cut in that, which is why I prefer that. So I just normally 96 decibels per octave, that at like 25, 30 hertz. But for this, because with the Ableton EQ it's 48, I normally do the 48 decibels an octave at 40, and I get a similar effect. The Ableton EQ really is decent. People freak out too much about how it's like not good. It's a better EQ than comes with most DAWs. I'll give it that. I hate Ableton's limiter. I can't stand it. FabFilter Pro L is a lifesaver. Get it if you don't have it. Yeah, that pretty much tops off the track. That's everything. All right. This is Fortune. Thanks for watching.
We're beautiful like diamonds in the sky.